Good morning to you, and I'm glad that you found time to join us this morning. Here are the latest headlines from across the continent of Africa and elsewhere. We start with the newspapers from Kenya. The Daily Nation, MP's new bid to block high county taxes. That is what we have on the front page there on the Daily Nation. The Business Daily and CBA Equity CEOs' salaries signal bankers bumper pay. The Standard newspaper, Sava Politics, the big gamble for Raila. That is what we have there. Then I'd like for us to look at some other papers from across Africa. Namibian B2 Gold starts packing up after 25 billion, as that is the Namibian currency, in sales. And names of Netumbo Shimi used to swindle 2 million of that currency as well. The Namibian Sun, beyond laughter and pleasantries, that is what we have on the front page. The Citizen from Tanzania, what 1.5 trillion Tanzania shillings pact herald for the economy, and framework agreement signed with three Australian mining firms have taken Tanzania a step closer to attaining and surpassing the target of ensuring that the mining industry comprises at least 10% of economic output, and improvements at the port yield positive results. That is all on the front page of the Citizen. And Tanzanian runner finishes second in Boston Marathon, and Arusha City Council misused 4 billion Tanzania shillings, says lawmaker. The New Times from Rwanda, photos as aid memoir, proof of life of genocide victims. And the main pictorial on the New Times, Kagame visits Guinea-Bissau. And Kagame was also meeting with the president of, I'm forgetting, was it of Benin over the weekend? So, all right. The Herald from Zimbabwe, quality education for all children guaranteed. And the Daily News as well from Zimbabwe, Chamisa alone won't get there, Chene Ngamu says as he calls for an opposition coalition. Charumbira in doghouse. We have that there. The Daily Monitor from Uganda. Pressure on ministers as Lobby is remanded. And government may not be ready for the new ID's Auditor General. And Sudan war could harm regional trade, says South Sudan envoy. And KCCA can't trace a P7 result slips of over 4,000 students. What? Okay. We have all that on the front page of the Daily Monitor. This day from Nigeria, INEC suspends Adamawa REC as Binani seeks judicial review of her announcement. And the Nation also from Nigeria, drama suspense APRO over REC's declaration of Binani. And then let's look at some newspapers from the US. The Guardian, that is the US version. FBI arrests 2 New Yorkers accused of running covert Chinese police station. That was very interesting. In the heart of New York, there are Chinese police stations there, and I was just listening to the story. It's quite intriguing. And then the Washington Post, Egypt's rocket reversal exposed, and GOP puts, on united front but fights loom. Putin for and post contributor gets 25-year term, and will schools need to keep chess in check, and some Supreme Court weighs religious accommodations. All that you'll find on the front page of the Washington Post. The New York Times, NATO turns proactive after Russia atrocities, and Sudan hospitals offer no refuge, and migrant children worked as US ignored warnings. Toxic chemicals crisscrossed US as rail freight, and man who shot teen on porch faces charges. And the US builds war crimes against case after America's execution in Syria. Okay, and the Newsday, sudden NATO tax hikes, assessment error brings unwelcome surprise to hundreds of homeowners whose properties were undervalued, and gorging impact of fully public life, I guess. All right. Okay. The Independent, we are in the UK now. More cancellations, more delays, more misery for millions. Internal report seen by this newspaper reveals the pitiful state of our national rail network, that is from the UK. I report Sunak under investigation by UK ethics watchdogs over wives' shares. The Garden, the UK version, energy firms face cabs on forced meter installations, watchdog inquiry linked to Sunak family finances, artist admits winning photo was AI generated. The Daily Express from the UK as well, reasons to be cheerful, economy on mend, and millions hit as hay fever, hell grips the UK. Okay, The Times, UK security chiefs alert over threat from China, and is your mind being wrecked by stress? Prime Minister investigated by ethics watchdog over wife's childcare shares, and gene finding could deliver contraceptive pill for men. I guess that will be some good news for the women folk. I don't know, but I don't know if you can trust men to be taking the contraceptives. High chances they will forget. I don't know, but that is something scientists have been working on. Now, the Daily Telegraph, single X schools can refuse trans pupils. Okay. Now that conversation and debate ranges on, especially in the UK. And the Daily Mail. So, which genius thought it was a good idea to terrify the whole country at 3 p.m. on Sunday, as government confirms plan to text us all an emergency alert? All right, so we have all that in those international newspapers, and of course some of the leading newspapers from across the continent of Africa. Let's look at some climatic conditions today across a few cities in Africa. Johannesburg, there's going to be highs of 23 degrees Celsius and the lows are 10 degrees Celsius. And it's going to be mostly sunny today in Johannesburg. In Nairobi, highs of 25 degrees Celsius and lows of 16 degrees Celsius. And it's going to be mostly cloudy today here. In Accra, Ghana, it's going to be mostly cloudy with highs of 32 degrees Celsius and lows of 26 degrees Celsius. And in Dakar, Senegal, highs of 24 degrees Celsius is expected and lows of 16 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be partly cloudy as well. There in Dakar and in Abuja, Nigeria, highs of 38 degrees Celsius and lows of 23 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be partly cloudy. And in Luanda also mostly cloudy with highs of 31 degrees Celsius expected and lows of 26 degrees Celsius. And in Khartoum, it's going to be highs of 40 degrees Celsius and 24 degrees Celsius on the low side. And it's going to be mostly sunny there in Khartoum. Of course, with the temperatures going up to 40 degrees, there's nothing but a lot of sunshine there in Khartoum. And in Addis Ababa, partly cloudy with highs of 24 degrees Celsius and lows of 12 degrees Celsius. So that is just a bit of a weather update in a few African cities. And you are now up to date, 35 minutes past 10 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. And the latest from Sudan, Iraqi President Abdul Latif Rashid has expressed his country's willingness to host a dialogue between the rival parties in Sudan to negotiate an end to the crisis in the African country. In a Facebook statement on Monday, Mr. Rashid expressed firm confidence in the wisdom of the brothers in Sudan, saying that the ability to hold peaceful and democratic dialogue is enough to overcome this crisis by immediately stopping fighting and armed actions. Nearly 200 people have been killed, about another 1,800 injured in 3 days of the fighting between the rival factions in Sudan. And the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has spoken to Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the head of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Amid fighting between the two forces, around 185 people have been killed since fighting broke out on Saturday. Mr. Blinken tweeted that he underscored the urgent need for a ceasefire and stressed the importance of ensuring the safety of diplomatic personnel and aid. The RSF has acknowledged the phone call with Mr. Blinken on its social media page, but has given no firm commitment to end the hostilities. A second 3-hour ceasefire on Monday night was barely honored with both sides blaming each other for the breach. An EU diplomat was assaulted in his official residence, while the UN said its agency's warehouses and guest houses were shot at and looted. Some civilian homes have also been broken into and residents were assaulted by RSF, but RSF denies involvement. The two military leaders disagree on Sudan's future, including the integration of the RSF into the national army. And the European Union, we're still on Sudan. The European Union ambassador to Sudan was attacked in his home in Khartoum on Monday. The bloc's top diplomat, Joseph Borrell, said as fighting between rival generals gripped the nation a few hours ago, the EU ambassador in Sudan was assaulted in his home. That is what Borrell said in a Twitter, without detailing any injuries to the envoy. He also added the security of the diplomatic premises and staff is a primary responsibility of Sudanese authorities and an obligation under international law. And he is right. I think I have repeatedly told us here what the Vienna Convention of 1961 on diplomatic relations, that is very key. I think Article 29 is very clear on that. And let's just move on to other news items that I would like for us to talk about before I come back to that Sudan. And just give us the latest update there because it is a developing story. We head over to Somalia, and about 200 million US dollars could have been paid out in compensation to families of African Union peacekeepers killed or injured in Somalia since 2007 in what has been billed as world's deadliest peacekeeping mission. More than 175 million US dollars on this has gone to compensate the families of soldiers killed on the battlefront, and further 15 million US dollars to injured or maimed in mission to rout Somali-based militant group Al-Shabaab. The AU has also disclosed that at least 3,500 troops from Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, and Ethiopia have died in Somalia over the 16 years. Now, just stop and think about it. 3,500 soldiers from this majority 4 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, Ethiopia, have died in Somalia over the last 16 years in a bloody peace mission that has yet to achieve its intended results. Uganda was the first country to put boots on the ground in 2007 with the African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, which mutated in the African Union Transitional Mission in Somalia, ATMIS, in April 2022. And I'll be coming back with a bit of details of that story if time will allow. We head over to Rwanda. An addendum to the Memorandum of Understanding between the United Kingdom, that is the UK, and Rwanda, signed last month when UK Home Secretary Suella Braverman visited Kigali, will now see the transfer of people who have not claimed asylum in the UK to Kigali. The initial memorandum, signed on April 13, 2022, was limited to illegal migrants arriving on small boats seeking asylum in the UK. But the new deal creates a mechanism for the relocation to Rwanda of individuals arriving illegally in the UK who do not make an asylum claim or raise a formal application for protection in the UK. Kigali has the option to deport to their home country a relocated individual who does not raise an asylum or protection claim. The addendum, who also includes an assurances as to the treatment of relocated individuals monitored by the Joint Committee and the Monitoring Committee established under the agreement. Meanwhile, Rwanda is pulling out all stops, preparing for the arrival of the immigrants from the UK, even as the controversial migration deal remains mired in legal challenges. Rwandan Court of Appeal decision is expected this month after Charity Asylum Aid opposed the High Court verdict that the policy is lawful and does not violate the Refugee Convention on Human Rights laws. Despite courting controversy over the deal, Kigali, which received an advance payment of 140 British pounds, that is equivalent to 175 million US dollars, is in development funding for the processing and integration cost, says it is determined to make the pilot scheme work. And yes, that is all I wanted to bring you up to date with. Of course, Kigali is determined to have that pilot work, and not because that it's so much concerned over the lives and the safety of these illegal immigrants who will be finding themselves to the UK and be brought to Rwanda. It is because Rwanda is standing to gain, and this is just how corrupt the international system is. Rwanda would not be agreeing to receive all these people if it was not getting something in return. And it is a good deal for Rwanda, but also this goes ahead to just just rubbish all these international laws, especially that have been created under the United Nations. And when you look at some of the laws around the refugees, I think it is quite watering down on some of those. But on the other hand, you would understand why the European Union, Britain are really have issues and concerns over this illegal immigration, and not just only from Africa but also from other parts of the world. I don't know if this would have been the right way to deal with it. For myself, I think especially the immigrants that are coming from Africa, the ones who a lot of times die in the Mediterranean, this is something that now is getting out of hand, and so it is just not enough to complain about how these countries in Europe are handling these issues. I think it's about time that the African Union looked at this matter as a matter of urgency and see how, as a continent, we can address this issue on our part, and just see that a lot of our young people don't end up dying in trying to make this dangerous journey in the hopes of getting greener pastures in Europe and elsewhere across the world. So while I do understand their concern, these European countries, and other countries, they are concerned, because even the US is dealing with mass migration from Southern America and other parts of the world. So it is a world problem, really. It is a world problem, and I think as we just report here, as several sub-Saharan African migrants died in the Mediterranean trying to cross to the other side. This much amount, a boat capsized, and this and that, and this has become so normalized that we don't even look at it as it's a big deal. So I think it is about time that we really tried to find a solution to this problem here in the continent. If Rwanda is very kind to have these immigrants from UK, Rwanda, you could also be kind and just have other immigrants from across the continent of Africa. You could offer also to host them, those who are running away from difficult conditions, those who are fleeing from wars and conflicts in different parts of the continent. I think you could also extend your kindness towards these people, so that they don't have to cross over to Europe and then they're returned to your country, others, and others end up even losing their lives in the process. So this deal that was signed, so it's not only for the people who would have made it to the UK as illegal migrants, but also non-asylum seekers. If you have been in the UK for a certain limited amount of time, and you have not gone and looked for your papers so that you can legally stay in the UK, you are bound to be taken to Rwanda. You're bound to be taken to Rwanda. So that is there. So Rwanda is benefiting. At the end of the day, Rwanda is benefiting, and it has so far received an advance of 140 million pounds. That is equivalent to 175 million US dollars. And if you know Rwanda and its population and how the country is, that is a lot of money for that country. And Rwanda tries to use all the avenues it can get and squeeze every ounce of pounds and dollars it can get from these Western countries, in this international system. And really, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, has really learned how to play this game. They castigate him so much, especially over the issue of DRC. But Paul Kagame has stood his ground, the president. Has stood his ground in so many times, in so many instances, and he normally disagrees with them vehemently, but he has created this space and a need for him, so that countries like UK still need him so much. Countries like France and other European Union countries still need the presence of Rwanda, even as much as they don't agree in several other issues, and that is the nature of international relations. Yesterday I was talking to you about China and the US. Their they are rivals, and sometimes this rivalry gets to some very detrimental depths. But when you look at even in the international trade, the US is the biggest trade, has a lot of import from China, and China also the same from the US. So they need each other. So as much as they don't agree on certain issues and on certain principles, but at the end of the day, they need each other so much, and they do benefit from each other's economy. So you have to understand. And when it comes to these international relations and international systems and how states and why states behave the way they behave, then you will understand that usually there are no permanent enemies as such. Every state is only advancing its own interest, and one state could be disagreeing with another state today over certain issues, and 5 years later or 3 years later or next week, they'll find something that brings them together, that they get to benefit from each other, and they will still be able to work around those issues. So that is how that works there. So Rwanda, you've really learned the ropes and the tricks and all that, and how to survive in this very anarchical system. And I think you're doing very well for yourself, President Paul Kagame. But that, of course, is a very controversial move, the agreement that you entered with the UK to have asylum seekers who find themselves in the UK illegally to be brought into your country. So, okay, let's just move on to Somalia. And this payout that has gone on since under United, not United Nations, but under African Union, of course, it's usually given a nod by the United Nations, this peacekeeping mission, even the one ATMIS, the one we have now, usually it gets its blessings from the United Nations, because all of these blocks, they still operate somehow under the United Nations. So we still, has to authorize some of these missions. And that includes what is now known as ATMIS, right? So a lot of money has been paid out to the soldiers who have been on a mission in Somalia, initially known as the African Union Mission in Somalia, AMISOM, which mutated into the African Union Transitional Mission in Somalia that happened in April of last year. And speaking to the media, Mohamed El Amin Souf, AU Commission for Somalia Chairperson's Special Representative, Mohamed El Amin, revealed the massive human losses suffered by the East African troops in Somalia. And I think this is the part that we don't get to talk about. This is the kind of loss that we don't get to talk about. And countries that have sacrificed to have their troops, men and women, to go and try to find peace and stabilize Somalia, or is one of the reasons that is being given now over the period. Initially I mentioned there that over 3,500 service men and women have died in this mission in Somalia. And one of the reasons this official from the office of the African Union, from the office of the AU Commission for Somali Chairperson Special Representative, this is what he said: the troops are not prepared, and the administration was not even in Mogadishu. Many cases were not properly documented. The mission has documented about 4,000 casualties dead. According to officers who served in the mission, the number of casualties, including the disabled, could not be more than 5,000. This is quite disheartening. Now, he confirmed an estimated death toll of 3,500, noting that Burundian and Ugandan troops have suffered the most casualties. Burundi and Ugandan troops. And this is what he said, I'll quote him: "We will prioritize the families of soldiers killed in Somalia for compensation, as some of them have not yet been recognized due to lack of funds." According to a memorandum of understanding signed between the troop contributing countries and the AU, about 50,000 US dollars should be paid for each life lost. Okay, and I can guarantee you that money did not get to these soldiers or to the families, because there's a lot of corruption. Was I not talking to you the other day about Ugandan soldiers who have been in this mission who have not received their pay since 2018? So, and they're the ones, together with Burundian troops, who have lost the most of their lives here. So you can imagine, if now the soldier is dead and their families have to be compensated. Tricky. Now, they're supposed, the families are supposed to get, the next of kin supposed to get at least 50,000 US dollars, will be paid for each life lost, while the amount paid for injuries or disabilities will be determined by the degree of injury or disability suffered as determined by Joint Medical Board, with estimates ranging from 10,000 US dollars. And you know, war is a very lucrative business. You know that, right? War is a very lucrative business. That is another conversation for another day. But some of the families have yet to receive this compensation, even as soldiers from some troop contributing countries await payment from their respective administrations, despite the fact that the European Union, the Commission's largest financier, distributed the funds in February. It emerged that soldiers who have served in the 2018-2022 missions had not yet been fully paid, after the EU confirmed that it was up to date with its funding contributions. An EU spokesperson confirmed, those are soldiers from Uganda, by the way. An EU spokesperson confirmed to the East African that the first payment of support for the military component of Artemis in 2022 was made to the African Union Commission in line with the EU-AU Summit Declaration on February 17, 2022. This is demonstrated by the adoption of two support measures totaling to $792.2 million US dollars for African-led peace support operations through AU under the European Peace Facility for the period of 2021 and 2024. A spokesperson said, now the cost of running Artemis is in the upwards of 1.5 billion US dollars annually, from around 350 million US dollars when the first troops landed in Somalia 2007. Now, the AU's financials for 2021 show that the amount paid to troop contributing countries also tripled from 37.59 million US dollars to 100.8 million US dollars. The AU received 264.62 million US dollars from partners for peace and security missions in 2021, and up from 244.3 million US dollars the previous year. EU support in 2021 was 116.4 million US dollars, and China gave about 6.4 million US dollars, Italy 1.02 million US dollars, and Denmark 779,000 US dollars. The AU spent 204.62 million US dollars on peacekeeping and support operations in 2021, an increase of 8 million US dollars from the previous year, and peacekeepers allowances increased from 185.45 million US dollars to 197.8 million US dollars, while death and disability allowances decreased. Why are we having death and disability allowances decreasing? From 8.64 million US dollars in 2020 to 6.7 million US dollars. I guess not so many people died or got disabled in the process of this peacekeeping. That could be one side of it, or just AU has decided to just slash a part of that what they get. So in essence, that is what is what is happening, and I think I thought it was important for me to bring us up to date with the activities and what is happening at ATMIS. And as much as we're here and talking about how Somalia has really made stride as far as fighting Al-Shabaab is concerned, and we've seen that happen, but also we have to look at the human factor, the loss factor, what these soldiers go through from other countries who are in Somalia, and indeed who are also in other troubled countries across Africa, who are trying to bring peace and help in stabilizing these governments. This mission has consumed so much money, and many years later, really, we have nothing to show for it. Okay, granted, it is multifaceted and a lot of issues interplay, but you would agree with these figures that I'm reading to you here. There are people who are benefiting, so there are people, as much as we are here trying to find peace and stabilize Somalia. When you look at the money aspect and the funding aspect, if somebody told you that there are a section of people who want to keep this going and who are really not interested in stabilizing Somalia, please don't argue. because, like I've said, war has become the new venture. War has become the new enterprise, and there are people who are benefiting. There are people who have to supply with their arms. There are people who have to supply with certain things that these missions need. So it's a whole enterprise. And so there are people, when you look at the money that exchanges in these peace missions, then this mission will go on as far as it can go, and we will continue receiving more funding. And at the end of the day, we cannot really account for that funding. We cannot really see a more stable Somalia, or a more stable South Sudan, or a more stable Democratic Republic of Congo, or a more stable anywhere, because there are people in this international system, and not just in Africa. Africa, we're benefiting very, very little with the monies that is given to our soldiers, which our government, I have not heard of the Kenyan government, but at least there are other countries that have refused to really honor and pay the monies that has even been given to their soldiers, to pay their soldiers. So it is an enterprise. It is an enterprise. And because of the money factor, you'll find that there are people who are committed to making sure that these conflicts continue, because the more they continue, the more they get to benefit. And that is the ugly side of it. But that is the truth, and that is what happens in these peace missions. Obviously, I need breakfast, so I need to finish up and go have some tea. But I'm just saying, in these missions, there are people who are benefiting from these lives that are being lost, who are benefiting from this madness, who are benefiting from these women who are being raped, who are benefiting from these children who are being displaced. There are people who are sitting somewhere waiting to see or strategizing on how to keep these conflicts going so that they keep benefiting. Okay? And these are the capitalists out there who have no regard to human life. For them, it is business, and business is business. Now, let me read us quickly an update from Blinken on the Sudan situation. I know I read earlier about what he said over the attack. I think the U.S. This is the UN or the U.S. convoy was attacked yesterday. Yes, so this is what Blinken had to say over the U.S. convoy attack in Sudan. The U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has described as reckless an attack on a U.S. diplomatic convoy in Sudan amid fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. I will quote him: "This action was reckless, it was irresponsible and out of course unsafe." He told reporters in Japan, where he attended a meeting of G7 foreign ministers, and he said also that we have deep concerns about the overall security environment. It came as Mr. Blinken spoke to the head of the army, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and RSF head, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, and stressed the importance of ensuring the safety of diplomatic personnel and aid workers. The EU's ambassador, as I had mentioned there earlier, in Sudan, Aidan O'Hara, was earlier reported to have been assaulted at his home in the capital, Khartoum, amid the fighting between the army and the RSF forces. About 185 people have been killed and more than 1,800 injured in the 3 days of fighting in Sudan, and that is according to the United Nations. Like I said, this is a developing story, and I'll talk much about it later, but for right now I think I'll just I'll not get into the details of it. But anyway, sounds of gunfire are still being heard in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, despite mounting pressure for rival groups to cease fighting. This is as we are talking right now, and by the way, it's top of the hour, 11 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. A very good morning to you. And a justice and democracy campaigner in Khartoum, Haya Al-Karib, told the BBC Newsday program that she could still hear very loud artillery sounds around her. And the Sudanese army and paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces are reportedly still engaged in fierce fighting to control the military headquarters in the capital. Al Arabiya TV reported sounds of bombings and heavy gunfire in the vicinity of the General Command on Tuesday. Fighting is also reported around Khartoum Airport and other places in Omdurman and Khartoum Bahri. Both sides have claimed control of the army command as well as the main airport. There have been multiple international calls for an end of fighting that is now in its fourth day and has led to nearly 200 deaths so far. Okay, and the UN Special Envoy to Sudan has told the BBC, I'm just receiving these reports as they come in, this has just come in, has told the BBC that he is in a daily contact with two generals whose forces are fighting for control of the country. Volker Perthes said the leaders of the warring factions were talking to the United Nations but not to each other. He said he would continue to press for humanitarian pauses so civilians can escape the fighting while also pursuing a full ceasefire. Ceasefire agreed on Sunday and Monday was not fully observant. The U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has also spoken to the commanders of Sudan's army and the rival paramilitary rapid support forces to call for an end of the bloodshed. Residents of Khartoum have again reported exchanges of heavy artillery and as fighting continues for the fourth day. So that is what the latest news from Sudan. That is what you're receiving now, and perhaps a quick one from Tunisia, because also this is a story that we have been following. Okay, the opposition and Halda party in Tunisia said its headquarters were raided by police hours after its leader, Rachid Ghannouchi, was arrested. There's been no word from former Speaker of the National Assembly since he was taken from his home in Tunis on Monday. Mr. Ghannouchi is the latest critic of the authoritarian Tunisian President Kais Saied to be detained. The head of the opposition coalition, of which Ennahda is a member, called his arrest a blind revenge. The Interior Ministry said Mr. Ghannouchi had been brought in for questioning and his house searched on the orders of prosecutors investigating inciting statements. He appeared in court at the end of February on terror-related charges. The same thing I've been saying about Sudan, because we could clearly see these events unfolding. We could clearly see Sudan was headed to where it is right now. That is the same thing I've been saying about Tunisia. President Kais Saied keeps pushing and pushing and poking and poking, and he forgets that was the springboard for the Arab uprising that happened in 2011. He now rules Tunisia by decree. He has taken over the judiciary, he has taken over parliament and key institutions in the country. He's running it as it is a one-man show, and this will lead Tunisia to spaces where it may never be able to come out of. So but it is another. I don't want to say civil war. It could be a big word for right now, but I think it is problematic, and he keeps operating and targeting the opposition and targeting doctors and targeting the judiciary and targeting all these people. They'll get tired, even for the military that has kept him in power and he feels he has that protection. They'll turn against him, because sometimes where Tunisia is right now, they're unable to move forward, because how do you move forward when the institutions that are supposed to be working in helping the country move forward have been muzzled? And so it will get a time where even the military, the other security sectors, and everybody else will say enough is enough and we don't want you anymore. So I think President of Tunisia, Kais Saied, should read the mood and see what is happening elsewhere in the world and stop with this nonsense. This will have him removed. He keeps doing what he's doing and he keeps ruling by decree, and he's going to regret it. I think he should ask Ben Ali. Ben Ali was much tougher than him. I think he died after he was ousted. He ran, to Saudi Arabia? I don't remember the exact details, but I know he passed on years after the Arab uprising. Ben Ali was quite strong-hearted, so, as things keep changing, a lot of things keeps remaining the same, and that is the unfortunate part sometimes. So that is also another scenario across Africa that we really need to pay close attention to. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. About 6 minutes past 11 a.m. here in Nairobi. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you later at 3 p.m. and Dr. Matanga shall be coming in at 12 noon East African time with more on his opinion on what is happening there in Sudan. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Miriam Ogotu. Bye-bye.